U.S. military preparing to activate National Guard in Washington, D.C. And Donald Trump is now preparing to mobilize hundreds of National Guard troops in D.C. Now, Donald Trump last week was threatening sort of a federal takeover of Washington, D.C., suggesting that the Democrat-led law enforcement agencies of D.C. are failing at keeping D.C. safe, and it's unacceptable for the nation's capital to be essentially deemed unsafe. And so now you're getting this potential Trump move here to deploy the National Guard in D.C., much like he did in Los Angeles. Trump administration live updates. Here we go. The U.S. military is preparing to activate the National Guard in the nation's capital as part of the president's campaign against crime there. The president was expected to announce this at a White House news conference on Monday, that up to several hundred D.C. National Guard personnel will be sent to support law enforcement in the city. I will make our capital great again, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. Okay. Trump has not approved the deployment orders yet, but is expected to make that announcement. He says that crime is totally out of control and that the National Guard's individuals would not have arrest authorities. Instead, though, they would support law enforcement officials or free them up to carry out their patrol duties. You know who's really freeing up law enforcement officers to, fulfill their patrol duties, frankly, is Axon. I wonder how the stock's doing today. Not that, intraday really matters, but Axon, it's down 1%. Not a lot of volume on the stock. But look at this stock over time here. I mean, this is the week chart on the stock, and it's just been up and to the right. Here in 2019, pre-COVID, it was like a $40 stock, $800 stock now. This is being seen as like the AI for law enforcement play, and it's incredible because, if AI can take over the boring sort of report writing, it really does free up law enforcement to keep doing their work, especially since the body cameras are essentially recording audio and video anyway. You could really just have AI do the paperwork for you, which is partly scary, but also probably better than, a cop with potential bias writing a report where there really shouldn't be a bias. But anyway, the Trump administration also plans to temporarily reassign 120 FBI agents in Washington to nighttime patrol duties. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard of the FBI conducting a patrol. In fact, I think I usually hear law enforcement officers suggest that the FBI isn't exactly trained for street work, and that frequently there are some frustrations between law enforcement, patrol officers and FBI when it comes to actual patrol work and safety or procedures. But anyway, most of the agents will be pulled from their regular duties at the Washington, D.C. FBI field office. Wow. So pulling the FBI off their work, removing Trump's name from the Epstein files, doing whatever it is that they're doing at the FBI Washington, D.C. field office, and going out on patrol. The troop activation in Washington comes after the deployment this summer of nearly 5,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles to quell protests that had erupted over immigration raids. All but 250 of those troops have since been withdrawn. I think a lot of this, too, is just Donald Trump's very clear indication to voters that a vote for Trump was a vote for law and order, and Trump will stop at nothing to make sure it's clear that people are getting what they bargained for. Now, I know some people see that as, maybe a little too extreme or government overreach. But in fairness, if you've got the National Guard deployed, probably have a relatively safe region where the National Guard is deployed. I always actually thought you could use the National Guard to solve homeless problems, mostly because when people, fall asleep on the street, they end up dying on the street or end up becoming, drug victims or abuse victims or whatever else. And so even though it's much more militaristic, it is certainly a way of adding to security. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think that's disputable at all. But it does come across as a presence that people see as like way too much state power and overbearing. And obviously you wouldn't want it to become sort of a permanent fixture. It's not like you want to live in martial law, right? But if it could be used as a temporary crutch to get things going, or get the water bailed out of the ship, so to speak, and right size the ship, or maybe that's okay. Anyway, Trump administration plans to temporarily reassign 120 FBI agents in Washington to nighttime patrol duties as President Trump's crackdown on the city's street crime, or in response to these goals. It's very interesting. I think the whole point of this isn't necessarily that you're putting the most skilled street crime experts out. It's rather just that knowing that there's a physical presence of more law enforcement officers is basically Trump's advertisement for, hey, this is how we roll. And frankly, it probably will end up working to reduce crime, especially if you end up having the National Guard deployed in areas potentially with more crime. Something that you have to look at when you look at Washington, D.C., and we've looked at real estate quite a bit out at D.C., is D.C. changes very, very quickly. So, like, you could go from D.C. over here, like Lincoln Memorial, and you could drive not very far and end up in, Berry Farm over here, or Southeast Washington, for example. I mean, you kind of want a gun in some of these areas, So, like, there is a crime problem. There are dangerous streets. There are streets you just don't want to go to at night. So I'm not trying to single anything out in particular, but I mean, I've been on these streets, and so I get it. And I think Trump is trying to come from this angle of, hey, we're not going to let this happen anywhere that is a symbol of America. And Los Angeles is Donald Trump's tool for showcasing a democratic failure, which, in fairness, Los Angeles in part is. And then, thanks Newsom, also Karen Bass. And then, of course, the nation's capital, which, should be the most secure. Anyway, it's going to be really interesting to see. I think that'll make for a lot of press. But I'm always opposed, or I'm never opposed to more security, especially if that leads to more longer-term peace and safety for a functional region.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.